You know, as much as I love the sport of stock car racing, sometimes I really hate it. Like most other fans, I have something of a toxic relationship with NASCAR. I have no problem glazing them as long as I'm allowed to dunk on them too, because number one, it's fun, and number two, I know I'll never be out of a job, because no matter the time, place, or situation at hand, NASCAR's sanctioning body just can't seem to help themselves. A couple weeks ago, in the first 2 races of the year, hell, even before that, before the season had technically started, the almighty overlords of the asphalt reared their ugly heads again. And because of this, we couldn't even run a qualifying race without the first big controversy of the year. Welcome to 2025, folks. Way back when the dinosaurs roamed and Matt Crafton was in his 20s, the Caution Conundrum took a very different form. If the yellow flag was thrown late enough into the race, it would simply end the race early. NASCAR races didn't have overtime. They never went over their scheduled distances. And while, sure, that limited the amount of controversy on a competitive level, the fans did not agree. There was a prevailing sentiment, especially after Dale Jr. lost to Jeff Gordon in 2004, that this isn't how races should end. They should go out with a bang, with a race to the line. And NASCAR agreed, so they established the green-white checkered rule, a rule that had already been used for the Truck Series since its inception that would now be used for all 3 series. It stated that if a caution comes out late enough into the race, it'll be restarted with just 2 laps to go, though if there's another caution thrown anytime within those 2 laps, the race would be over. They only got 1 crack at it, until they eventually got 3, and eventually had unlimited chances to finish the race provided they couldn't make it to the overtime line. Basically, a second finish line. Yeah, it was as stupid as it sounds, and once NASCAR came to some semblance of sense, they gave us the rule we have today, where they can restart the race as many times as needed until the white flag flies, though that is where our current problem lies. Once it's the last lap, there are only 2 other flags that could possibly be thrown, both of which will end the race. Either the checkered flag, indicating that the leader has made it all the way back to the line, or the yellow flag, thrown only when conditions are too hazardous to let the race continue. But whereas the checkered flag by itself can only be waved when the cars cross the finish line, the yellow flag can be waved at any time. The cars could be here, they could be here, they could be here, it doesn't matter. If NASCAR thinks there is a condition too dangerous to race or even pace around, they'll throw the caution. But I'm not one for hearsay, and I'm also a huge nerd, so here's a map of where every last lap caution has been thrown under the current rules. Of course, not every track is shaped like Daytona, so in some cases, mainly the road courses, I had to guesstimate, but I'd say this is pretty accurate. Now, the ones that make the most sense to me are right here at the line. Not on the white flag lap, but the checkered. These examples show that NASCAR was willing to let the race play out naturally while still getting safety crews out on the track as quickly as possible. We'll circle back to that in a minute. The next most logical examples are here, on the first half of the track, because if you let the leaders race all the way back, they're still going to be going full tilt when they come back around, crossing paths with whatever or whoever is in their way. And even on the end of the backstretch heading into turn 3, it makes sense to throw a caution. In my research, I found that most of the gnarliest race-ending accidents happened here, and there's still enough of a gap to the finish line to justify a quicker emergency response. But here's where that decision gets a little murky. To throw or not to throw a caution? That is the question. Shakespeare said that, and NASCAR, to their credit, usually gets it right. At tracks like Bristol and Martinsville, you need to throw a caution because it only takes 10 to 15 seconds to circle back around. And even at the bigger tracks like Daytona, Atlanta, and Talladega, those extra seconds could always make a difference. But this, generally, is where NASCAR flips the decision, like they did in 2007, when despite a massive pileup that collected most of the field, they still let Kevin Harvick and Mark Martin race to the line. Same for the 2019 Talladega race. While the tri-oval was strewn with wrecked race cars, one of which was facing backward, they still let the leaders race to the line. Same for Talladega in 2020, Bristol in 2022, Talladega in 2023, and many more examples that go much further back. Because it's always been understood that if the leaders are about to cross the stripe anyways, you may as well just let things play out. So with that being said, why do these exist? By far the biggest group of outliers, the cautions that were thrown within a couple hundred yards of the finish line. Why would you even bother at that point? There must have been apocalyptic levels of calamity to force this, right? Well, not necessarily. Take this example, last year's shit show in Richmond. After Austin Dillon brutalized Joey Logano, he probably should have taken a moment to look in the mirror and reflect. Is this the kind of driver he wants to be? Is this the kind of man he wants to be? Well, there was no time to ponder such questions as he did the same thing to Denny Hamlin 3 seconds later, and just before he could reach the line, NASCAR threw the caution. While this call would end up costing Tyler Reddick a fateful 4th runner-up on the season, I agree with it for a few reasons. There were multiple wrecked race cars directly in the path of unwrecked race cars. Richmond is pretty small, so it wouldn't be long before the field was coming back around, and mostly because it didn't affect the race for the win. Once the 11 was wiped off the map, the 3 was winning this race regardless, and I think NASCAR recognized that, which is why they had no problem ending the race a few seconds early. Same goes for the 2023 Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. At such a tiny track, a car sitting backwards on the backstretch absolutely warrants a caution, and so it was thrown just before John Hunter Nemechek could get to the line and burn his own car to pieces. But right here, right in this little triangle, is where my understanding runs out. This is what I consider to be the holy trinity of botched caution calls. Truck Series, Talladega 2022. What should have been one of the closest finishes in NASCAR history, with Brett Holmes winning his first race by 2/1000ths of a second, was ruined because NASCAR inexplicably threw the caution despite being just 5 seconds from the finish. Xfinity Series, Talladega 2016. Another close finish that could have seen another first-time winner in Brennan Poole was ruined because NASCAR bewilderingly threw the caution despite being just 3 seconds from the finish. And then the example that inspired this whole video. Cup Series Daytona 2025. A side-by-side dogfight to the line at the end of Duel 2 is ruined because NASCAR dumbassedly threw a caution while being just 2 seconds from reaching the finish. 2 seconds! Look, I'm all for precautionary measures, but NASCAR, what exactly would you have done in that time? The cars would have still been going full speed either way, and I don't think ambulances and tow trucks can accelerate that fast. So this call only served 3 purposes. It took the win from Eric Jones, gave it to Austin Cindric, and proved that Mark Martin did in fact win the Daytona 500. Because if this isn't a caution, then this certainly isn't. But wait, there is more. Just 3 days later, on the last lap of the Daytona 500, there was a wreck on the backstretch over a mile from the finish line that collected a lot more cars and caused a lot more carnage, and yet this time they let them race all the way back. Then, a week after that, in Atlanta, another last lap wreck happened in virtually the same spot on the racetrack, and this time they threw the caution. And that's not even to mention the other 2 series. Xfinity crash on the backstretch, no caution. Trucks crash on the backstretch, caution! If you've done your job correctly for 2 days in a row, congratulations, you are doing a better job than NASCAR. I've seen them change rules over the years, I've seen them change over months, I've seen them change over weeks, but never have I seen so many different judgments toward what is effectively the same situation in just a matter of days. But even ignoring Atlanta, the dumbassery of Daytona deserves a special shout out. When one guy is on an island with a half lap left to run, no one would care if you threw the caution. In fact, most of us expected it. But when 2 cars are in a dead heat less than 100 feet from the finish line, let them race. I can't believe that even has to be said aloud, but that's just where we are now. For a sanctioning body whose sole purpose is to enforce the rules evenly, under zero pressure whatsoever, they just can't seem to do it. I know they're like any other sports officials. They're human. We can't expect them to always make the best calls. But would it kill them, when faced with the exact same circumstances in consecutive races, to make the same call? It's gotten so bad that we're no longer watching the race itself. We're watching the caution lights, because right now, that's what we're racing to. Not to the finish line, not to the flag, but to wherever they say. They have become the sole decider of these races, which is a shame because boy do they suck at it. But thankfully, NASCAR's fan base has offered plenty of solutions. Some have suggested splitting the track into zones, which I think makes things too complicated, like with the overtime line, while others think they should just throw it regardless, which I think is too simple and would lead to more situations like in the duel. In actuality, their current method of decision-making has a decent track record. They just need to make better decisions. My only 3 suggestions are this. They should establish specific approaches to specific situations, i.e. crashes on the backstretch, in the corner, coming to the line, etc. And if they make it to the restart zone, a well-defined marking on the racetrack that is close to the finish line, the idea of throwing a caution shouldn't even enter their heads. I don't know why it ever has. And lastly, have every single one of them drug tested. I refuse to believe they're making these calls sober. Wait a minute. Brian France? It's been you the whole time?
And I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Oh, you. No, but seriously, test them for drugs.